brain develop and how does screen time affect brain development in a baby? Okay, so I'm going to share some statistics about autism. I'm also going to talk about what is virtual autism. I hope people have heard about it. If you've not heard about it, it's also okay because I've also come across it quite recently in the past few months, virtual autism. Then some medical, recommendations from our medical fraternity in the US. I'm sorry, I don't have figures from India, but I have recommendations from the medical associations in the US as to how much screen time is appropriate for what age. And I'm sure that also will keep changing as the years pass by. But what is today, we can take a look at that. Again, is all screen time equal? Is screen time very good? Is screen time very bad? We are going to take a look at it briefly. And then finally, we are going to end up with strategies to limit screen time in your child and prevent eye strain, because screens means eye strain. We cannot deny that. So some strategies I can share with you. So now coming to brain development, let's talk about, screens are introduced to children right from, I guess, 4 to 5 months of age. That's what I hear sometimes. So I can't hear you, Pooja. I can't hear you. Huh?
So I was just going to say sooner. I have babies in the NICU, and if you want them to respond, there goes the screen.
Okay, so
A
I mean
song is
that's
being played, and yeah.
okay. Yeah, so maybe for
it's
rhymes
sooner.
and music or something, the child is exposed to the screen right from newborn, and that's where our topic is. From newborn to at least what I talk about today is applicable to 6, 7, 8 years of childhood. Okay, so when we talk about brain development, there are many therapists here, but we all know about the body-brain connection. So body-brain connection is something that physiotherapists and occupational therapists have known since a long time, and we bring it to our practice, into our treatment to create outcomes for our patients, for our neuro patients, for our pediatric patients. However, it is high time that parents of young children, particularly parents of newborn children and toddler age children, understand this connection, that the brain develops and learns mostly through what we call real life experiences. So that's where the screen comes. A screen is not real. It's just a maybe two-dimensional thing. But the brain learns, and there is ongoing development of the brain through real life experiences. And these real life, the development of the brain goes from newborn to up to 6 years of life. The brain doesn't stop developing there, but the rate of development slows down later on. So the highest rate of development is until 6 to 7 years of life. So some figures, the brain grows approximately 80% of the adult size by age 3 years of life. And then the brain is developed approximately 90% of adult size by age 5 years of life. So there you can see how it is connected to the screen time. Okay, now the brain architecture is majorly influenced, significantly influenced by genetics. Again, that we don't have any control, but the other two factors, it is influenced by experience and by environment, where we have a lot of control, experience and the environment. Brain architecture also depends on early learning. This early learning, which happens in the first 3 years of life, I generally say even 5 years, but the earlier the better. So brain architecture heavily depends on early learning. That is the first 3 years of life. This early learning lays the foundation for all later learning in life throughout adulthood or throughout as long as you live. So then this early learning becomes very important. So now let me give you an example. Generally, as Pooja said, that children are introduced to the screen mainly for rhymes, for music, whatever. But children are also shown objects, animals, fruits, vegetables on the screen. However, is it the same? When you touch an apple, you can feel how hard it is. You can turn the apple, you can feel whether it is hard or slightly soft. You can even smell the apple, you can even bite into it, taste it. If you say, let's say 2 fruits, a big papaya and a small apple, you can, or a baby. When I say you can, meaning, I mean the baby or children. So a child can differentiate between a big papaya and a small sized fruit called apple, or the papaya is orange or yellow and the apple is bright red. The papaya may be slightly softer relative to the hard apple. So now these things, the three-dimensional properties of any object, whether it is fruit or vegetable or toys or even live faces, you know, when children touch the mother's faces, hug them, the three-dimensional properties cannot be appreciated on a screen. You know, the same way, you know, rain falling on a screen, a child may learn this is rain, this is rainfall. However, when you actually feel the raindrops falling on your face, it's a whole different experience, you know, because the rainfall, the sound of the raindrops, the sound, the smell of the earth, you know, when the rain falls, the temperature of the water that the rain falls, the temperature of the atmosphere before the rain falls, and then when the rain falls. So these are experiences we all take for granted. And but for a child's life, particularly in today's world where screen time has exponentially increased, we really have to think about these real life experiences. So I spoke about fruit and rain, but how about all toys and objects? You know, a child learns to pick up a toy, manipulate it, turn it, shake it, bang it, maybe throw it, maybe rip it wide open, maybe stack it up, you know, the parts of the toy. So a child learns a lot just through manipulation. And then when the child is manipulating, the brain is learning, through the movements of the fingers, the hand, the wrist, the elbow, or even the shoulder, you know, if the child places a toy above the shelf. So, these real life experiences cannot be replaced by screen. Now, some parents choose to teach. They say, oh no, because this is what I've heard in my clinic. No, no, no. We use just the screen time just to teach educational stuff. So what is educational stuff? Letters, numbers, alphabets, rhymes, songs, fixing a puzzle on the screen. Okay. Maybe to learn about animals, to learn about fruits. However, we have to think, is the child really learning? Is the child really getting the concept? Is the concept really established? Because so many times, 9 out of 10 times, I find that children actually don't know the concept of counting the objects, 1, 2, 3, and placing them in a basket. They can do it on a screen or an iPad or somewhere, but they really don't get the concept of counting objects and placing them somewhere, or the concept of picking up things from here and taking it across the room. So this really bothers me, and I don't see this only in children with autism. Unfortunately, I see it in a large number of children who come to me only for handwriting and attention without a diagnosis of autism, or even maybe not diagnosed with a serious learning difficulty. And they are in mainstream schools, but they are really struggling, and teachers are having a hard time teaching them math, that's mathematics and spellings. And we know that dyslexia learning difficulties are associated with mathematics and spellings. Those are the two stark things that come up in LD. However, where did all this start from? That is, a point to think about. Okay. So, concepts do not really establish with screen time unless they're tied up to the world. So I'm not telling parents that don't teach them only through screen, but tie them up with real experiences in the world. If you're showing potatoes on the screen, show them real potatoes in life. Let them touch real potatoes in life and, transfer them from the bag to your basket or somewhere. That is one example I can give you. So now some statistics about autism. They don't have much data.
Ushma,
From the United States. Yes.
Ushma, it's Puja. I just had a couple of things to add here.
Sure, come in.
Yeah. So, a lot of things that Ushma said, in terms of experiences and how we are processing things in our environment, and then, trying to replicate that in real life, which is basically what we are looking for in our children, right? How can they manage on their own? That's sort of the benchmark, so to speak, right? A first grader can do this, a kindergartner can do this, a 2-year-old can do that, right? But to get to that level, exactly like Ushma said, you need that experience and you need the environment. And because I work with a lot of infants and, like I said, the very, very early days, I feel like, maybe, of course, now people have screens. I mean, their mobiles are always in their hand. So I'm seeing a lot of parents will just start rhyme or a song on a screen, like a device, versus singing it to their child.
Yes.
But the thing is that it is, what do you say, all these are foundations that begin even as early as the 4th or 5th month during pregnancy. And you cannot reach a certain age and say, okay, now my child is 3 years old and they need to do blah blah blah, so now I suddenly expect this to happen, you know. So even if your child is older, of course it's not saying that you cannot make changes to their
Yes.
their
Yes.
brains at a later age. But if you have a younger child, or if you're expecting another child, if someone in the family is expecting another child, you know be aware that a lot of things happen so quickly in the first few weeks of life. And I'm not kidding when I say weeks, it is weeks. 2-3 months, and your eyes, your ears, your head control, which shapes a lot of these things. Because like Ushma was saying, right, 2D versus 3D, that comes from moving your body against gravity in space, right? And you're expecting a 3-year-old to pick up their head off the floor. That's exactly where it's beginning from. So imagine all the things you can do. And when I say do, and when we talk about doing, we are not saying you have to keep aside 30 minutes, or like generally when we say let's do something with our child, you automatically feel burdened, because it becomes like, oh no, now where will I find the time to do this, you know but it's not that. You are already doing so much with your child. You're already interacting at a what do you say, at such a high level that you don't even recognize it, the caregiving that happens. So anyway, so I wanted to say that first, experiences start extremely early. So don't wait till they reach a certain age to say, okay, now they're ready for something. The other thing is trial and error, like Ushma was saying about puzzles on the iPad, right? So I actually realized this with my child as well. Like, we actually didn't use screens till the first 2 years, and he used to do so many puzzles, like actual physical puzzles. And now I see he's obviously he's much older, he's in middle school now. But with the advent of screen time, he doesn't want to sit and do puzzles with me anymore. So it's so easy, because if the piece doesn't fit in a certain slot, it goes bang, and so you don't try that piece again, you try another piece. But that's not what happens when you actually have the pieces in your hand. You have to sort it by color, say, or you have to sort it, does it have a border, I mean, all of these things. It's such a complex skill to put a puzzle together, which does not happen with an iPad. So the trial and error, if you miss out on that, obviously it's going to lead to a lot of emotional issues. Then this child can't stand losing, this child
and social issues
social issues, absolutely. So no, I mean, we all say, oh, screens are bad, but I feel like it's not a blanket statement like that. Of course you can use screens for good stuff, like we are doing right now. So basically you need to know what use you can get out of it in the right manner, in the right age.
Correct.
So yeah, I just want to say that it's not dire that if your child is older, oh my god, we messed up,
missed it or something.
Yeah.
Yes.
But at the same time, also know that it starts early. So if you have an opportunity to grab someone who has a newborn and have a chat with them about all these things, the earlier the better.
Okay.
All right.
So thank you, Puja. Thank you for jumping in. So basically, real life experiences help you to establish concepts much better than a screen, contributes to brain development in all arenas, in motor area, sensory area, social, emotional, and cognitive. Because as we work with experiences in life, there are maps that are constantly being formed in our brain, shaped and reshaped throughout life. But as I said, much earlier, the foundation is laid much earlier. The child understands the difference between a real world and a virtual world. Fortunately, I've not seen too much examples of killing and hitting or whatever. I am very ignorant about video games, but I've heard it, from foreign countries that, children are using so much of screen time that they come to a point where they lose the difference between killing, in a video game on a screen versus they really don't know what is real killing. They really don't know where they are. So it goes into a dangerous level. But then our children, so the point is that our children have to learn the difference between real world and the virtual world. Okay. Excessive TV and video games have been shown to increase aggressiveness in children. I'm sure as adults here, all of us have observed this, but it has been shown by research. Screen time also affects your sleep, because the screen, the light from the screen and the screen time takes you away from the natural light, so it suppresses your melatonin already and affects your sleep, negatively impacts your sleep. The biggest problem I have about screen is instant gratification. The child just does this and something pops up, or a music or a light or something, versus if you give the child something real in life, it really makes an impact. The child can manipulate, the child can learn, touch, contributing to all the sensory systems. Okay. Screen is also a major distraction. And last, but the most important to me as a clinician, is screen is a major distraction. So in my clinic, generally, I do have a rule for parents also that, please keep away your phones while you are in therapy or watching me, or if you are on the phone, you have to take a phone call, then you step out of the therapy room away from your child, so your child is not distracted. Screen time also, this is something very big we don't realize, but screen time takes away interaction time between parents and children. Interaction between parents and children right from newborns contributes to eye contact, speech and language later, a biggest piece we are missing. And maybe no wonder we have many children, even without a proper diagnosis, have delayed speech. So that's something important to keep in mind. Screen time also takes away opportunities to engage in physical movement and experiencing the real world. I'm going to come to the real world again and again, so please excuse me, regarding that. And then when the child engages in physical movement, they can give input to themselves, for the development of the vestibular and the proprioceptive systems, vestibular, proprioceptive, and the tactile systems, which are again the power senses. They are the foundation for all learning. All of us therapists know that. So physical movement, screen time replaces physical movement. It interferes with the bonding, eye contact, and a young child, generally all that the young child needs to learn is the face, particularly mother's face, father's face, adult's face in the family, because a young child is always looking at our face, our expressions, the movements of our lips, which further contribute heavily to eye contact, speech and language. Speech therapists here know better than that. I just know that from experience, and also I've raised my children who are now in their 20s. I raised them absolutely without screen time, so I understood the importance of it. But that was a different time in the 90s when I raised them. So this is all about the body-brain connection. Now let's share some statistics about autism. So autism, they don't have, this data is from the United States, and they don't have much data before 1975, which is how many years ago? I guess more than 35 years ago. So in 1975, they have documented a case of autism, 1 in 5,000. Just bear in mind, 1 in 5,000. Now, fast forward to 2005, which is 30 years later, right? From 1975 to 2005. Fast forward to 2005, the number of autism cases became 1 in 500. 1 in 500. And then fast forward to 2020, another 15 years, which is the current times, 1 in 54, some numbers say 1 in 68. But anyway, they are close. So just look at, and I can, this is documented data, but I can experience this because I have worked in the United States in the early 90s, during the first 5 years, in the late 80s and early 90s, during the first 5 years of my career. I barely came across one child with autism, and even we were not even sure whether the child had autism. Even therapists who were more experienced than me couldn't really figure out what this is. But look at the jump in numbers. And how did this all start? 1975 was the time, that is the mid 70s, when the TV screens became very common in the United States. People had more money to buy TV screens, and by the 80s, people had like 3 and 4 and 5 televisions in their homes. I'm not kidding. Television in the kitchen, television in the bedroom, television in the living room. And then we all know after that, the whole thing has come to India also. Yes, we don't have 4 and 5 screens, but we all have home theaters, sometimes a TV in the bedroom. We all have that. So, these are the numbers. Surely we as a human race have done something to impact this, right? If there's no direct connection, even an indirect connection, as a human race, we have contributed to this. So this is the statistics. Now, what is virtual autism? So even as a therapist, I was not aware about virtual autism until I came across it, that term virtual meaning, related to screens, related to the internet. So there is a clinical psychologist called Dr. Marius Zamfir. He's in Romania. And he has coined this term virtual autism. So he differentiates it from the classical autism that we see. Now, I still as a clinician have to give a lot of thought about this, and I still remain a little confused about the difference between classical autism and the virtual autism. I'm trying to sort it out. However, what Dr. Zamfir found, he's done a few studies. It's still not out there so much in research, but you can find his articles and his writings on social media. Puja, can you please share, his name, Dr. Marius Zamfir, a clinical psychologist in Romania. He has published interesting studies. And he saw that children, when, who are exposed excessively to screen time between 0 to 3 years of age, 0 to 3 years of age. And what is excessive? More than 4 to 5 hours per day. So children between 0 to 3 years, if they're exposed to screen time more than 4 to 5 hours per day, they develop these signs of autism. And they did a 5-year longitudinal study, which they published sometime around 2017 or 18, so very recent. They saw that when they removed 100% electronic devices from children's lives, the symptoms of autism got better, the IQ got better, and overall the performance got better by 37%. So this is what the research study. So it does tell us something, whether we are talking about classical autism, which is, genetic, or we are talking about virtual autism, whatever it is. But as adults in society, as parents, as therapists, as educators, we have to keep this in mind, that genetically the child may have anything, but why should we superimpose screens in a child's life and lead to all of this? That is what I wanted to speak about. So you can read more about Dr. Zamfir in Romania, and the recommendations of the medical fraternity, that is the American Association of Pediatrics, the American Psychological Association, they have recommendations: no screen time till the age of 18 months to 2 years. However, it is very hard for parents to implement this. In Romania, they have actually since the past 3 years, they have had an intense campaigns for stop virtual autism. They have had intense campaigns, and I think they've collaborated with other countries, but in other countries like France and USA, it is, it has been hard to implement these procedures with parents, that no screen time until age 2 years. 2 to 5 years, you can have 1 hour per day, and 6+ years, they say 2 hours, but then you have to have mindful usage of screen time. And when we say screen time, it includes everything: TV, video games, phone, tab, whatever. Screen is a screen. That's what they say. So then, keep these, recommendations. And now I have started writing in my reports of babies. Although I do treat 3+ age of children, but I do treat babies also. And I've started writing in my reports also, no screen time. I've started doing that, I've taken a bold step of doing that. Now, is all screen time equal? No, screen time is not necessarily very bad. At the same time, it's not necessarily very good. This is not the only way to go. So they have come up with ideas like, use mindful screen time, understand why are you having a child use the screen? What is the reason behind it? Are you tying up real life experiences with that screen time so that the child has a better balanced development? Connecting over the screen with grandparents, relatives, particularly important in the last 1 year, that has been beneficial, to have the screen time. Again, how much is very personal, and you have to have a idea about it. How much are you going to allow it, with family members, grandparents? How much are you going to allow it per day? With friends, for example, a lot of first graders and kindergartners have met over screen during the last 1 year because they could not meet each other. But how much are you going to allow? As an adult, you have to decide. And so they say relatively the white light from the Kindle is relatively better than the blue light from other screens. This is the way they have they have said that all screen time is not equal, but you have to have mindful usage of screen time. So now coming to strategies, mindful usage, that's what I'm saying. And that depends on every adult, what that mindful is for your child, according to your child's age. But the one thing you can do is provide opportunities for your child to have family time together. And during the last 1 year, actually, we have seen two scenarios that many parents have called, in distress. What do I do with my child? My child shows aggression. My child doesn't listen to me. Or children with autism, their sensory issues have really worsened. What do I do when you just cannot get out of the apartment or the building or go anywhere? But on the other hand, I've also heard from many parents that, staying at home, parents working from home has helped the child in terms of bonding, playing, and some of the behaviors or even the sensory issues of many children have become better, if not resolved. So there, it goes to show, how do we use our screen time? Is bonding better or screen time better? And if parents themselves are always looking at the screen like this, of the phone in the hand or an iPad, or they're always videoing the child or taking pictures of the child, be careful that the child is always going to remember the parent like this, like this. The baby needs to see the child's face. The baby needs to see the parent's face, not this. So think about how many photographs and video also you want to take of your child. Rather than that, spend a good playtime, bonding time, no matter what age your child is. So there are many things age appropriately you can do as a family time. Two main things is, create media free time. So when we say media screen, create media free times, such as cooking dinner together, eating dinner together, no screen time, going for cycling together, going for walks together, cutting vegetables, cleaning the house. There are lots of things. If the child is younger, like 2 to 3 years old, you can make a fort, gather a group of chairs in your house and put a bed sheet on it and make a fort. Think back, how did children get raised until the smartphone was invented, I guess, in 2007, 2008, that is when the smartphones began. So think about how young children were raised before 2007 and 2008, or how did children spend time in the 90s? At least that much we can do. We just cannot shrug off the idea, oh, that world doesn't exist anymore, so we cannot bring that world. No, we can bring parts of that world to our world to make life better for us and our children, and more so for the bonding, for the social, for the emotional development of the child. Because think about, what do you want your child to grow up into, what kind of adult? Okay, so create media free times, create media free locations. No screen on the dining table, no screen during meals, no screens in the bedroom, no screens in the park, no screens in the car. Okay, so you can create media free locations and media free timings, together as a family. And there are lots of strategies that you can do. Before giving you, okay, so then let me talk about eye strain, and I want to talk about one more topic which I came across in New York Times. So preventing eye strain, screen is basically eye strain for all of us. And I think this works more for children. To prevent eye strain, what do you do? If you're providing screen time to your child, let's say a 6+ year-old child who has to do their online classes, homework, etc., what do? Place a screen at a distance of 22 to 28 inches from the face of the child. Align the top of the screen to the eye level of the child so that the child is looking down, okay, not looking up. Position the child so that the child's feet is well supported on the floor. That is my favorite. As a therapist, that is like my always standing instructions, for toileting, for anything at all, writing, eating, anything at all. The child's feet have to be well supported, full on the floor. Encourage the child to move around a little bit. Encourage the child to get up very frequently, every 15 minutes, every 20 minutes. Child is not going to know how to do that. As physiotherapists who work with ergonomics, we also give these instructions. Every 15 to 20 minutes, we ask adults to stand up and, take a walk around. So why should not we do the same to the children? Every 20 minutes, that's the rule, that 20-20. Every 20 minutes, encourage a child to look away from the screen, look at a 20 feet distance, look at some object or a person at a 20 feet distance for 20 seconds. That's a 20-20 rule. And then blink frequently, rather than just stuck on the screen. And so one more thing, in the New York Times article, again, Puja is going to share that link in the chat box. It's a very good read for everybody. What they have done is the difference. How do children learn reading? What is the difference when children learn reading in books versus screens? Books versus screens, remember that. So this is a very recent article just published in March 2021. Think about how do we use screens? We use screens mainly, screens were actually intended to use for social media. So when we scroll down the screens, we scroll quickly, we absorb information very quickly and gradually, but we don't necessarily learn. We don't necessarily learn from that. Whereas for a child doing a class homework or an assignment, the child has to learn. The child has to absorb information, and that learning comes from slow absorption of information, careful absorption of information. So think about books and screens, careful absorption of information versus quick absorption of information. That is the biggest difference. The second thing they find is Professor Naomi Barron. She's mentioned in that article. She's a linguistics professor at American University. She talks about that the physical medium, whether we use the screen or the books, the physical medium that we use heavily impacts our mindset we bring while absorbing that information. Okay, and she talks at length about that. Dr. Tiffany, when we read a book, basically, it becomes easier for parents to establish an eye contact, establish, question, answer, regarding the content of the book when you read a book together with a young child. So she calls it the dialogic reading, which doesn't happen during a screen. When you share a screen together, and they actually did a study where they saw that children read a book on a screen, the child just read it on his or her own versus the parent being involved. Even the parent was present right there, but it was not that dialogic interaction going on between the parent and the child. There was less eye contact, there was less social interaction. So think about it, how does it lead to speech and communication, even for children who are already talking, even for children who don't have speech issues. And that's the reason I said at the beginning of this topic, when I started, I said this topic is for all children, not only children with special needs. Okay. So yeah, please read that article, and the 3 links I think Puja would have shared, right, in the chat box, right? So I think there is also a movie called 3 Generations. How do they define fun? It's available on YouTube. I think that link also I've asked Puja to share. 3 generations of families defining fun. And the kids' answers will really break your heart. It's a very short movie, just 1.5 minutes. Please watch that movie and look at the movie and see how the grandparents spent their time, how did the parents spend their time, and how did the generation, this current generation where children are 7, 8 years or 10 years old, what do they say about how they would like to spend their time? They just say video games, or TV or screen or whatever. And while giving those answers, Somebody says, oh, I would go crazy if I didn't get my video games. Or, they don't even look at each other. Whereas the previous two generations, they look at each other, when they answer. They look happy. The affect on the face, which is so important for therapists, when we observe affect on the face. That affect on the face is so warm and glowing, in the first two generations versus the children, they are, I guess, typical children, but they look more of slightly low expression and a little robotic when they talk.